All right, we're back to the Prepare to Fight Fire podcast. Welcome. Today, I've got the Scott Chappell. I'm super excited to talk shop and break things down. This man, whether he knows it or not, has impacted my life professionally, personally, and I'm super honored that God put me in the position of being a brand new guy that didn't know shit about shit and was very immature and just surrounded me with people like Scott that molded and really paved the way of what it means to be a fireman, what it means to be a leader. And I'm super stoked to talk to you, man. So welcome.
Brother Julian, it's great to be here. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're doing so well. I'm thrilled that we're having this conversation and that you're doing this podcast.
Yeah,
It's good stuff, and I'm excited to be here.
yeah, absolutely. So I wanna go back to the beginning. So guys, we'll go back now years, 10 years, 11 years, something like that. I get hired with Marion County Fire Rescue. I show up to Station 17 and I'm on C shift. You're the A shift cap or lieutenant. And I'm at the station on C shift, and your name comes up by the driver that I had at the time, which was Chandler.
Oh,
And
cool.
he brought your name up in high regard, and that's when I first heard about Scott Chappell, right, Lieutenant Chappell,
Mm-hmm.
and he brought up your name of just the regiment that you approach the fire service with, and how you operate and stuff like that. And he was just kind of talking to me about the station and the different captain, the different officers, you, Chris Cole, Sean Beam, and the differences in each of you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next morning, I got to meet you, and I could tell that the first moment I met you that you were very structured, you were very intentional. Fast forward now to being on the job 10 plus years, come to respect how important that is, and how if you don't have a plan, if you don't have intention, this career can like snap, and you can't control the time, right? The calls
Sure.
come, the days come, the vacations come, the promotions may come, they may not come. People, leave. You have your own personal things that come up. And at the end of the day, what are we really accomplishing from the standpoint of training, standpoint of self-development, standpoint of, financial growth, like all of these different things. If you don't have a structure and a plan, you're not going to get as far as you want, right? It's just, you get
Uh,
lost,
so I agree 100%. And, having this conversation I'm reflecting back to some of that, and I loved it. But it's funny you mentioned the structure, because, of course, on the one hand, I tend to have a structure. We're going to train, we're going to do this. We have projects that are assigned to us. We will accomplish all of our projects by the deadlines. And we have also projects that are important to us. So we as a company, as a crew, would have things that we wanted to do, wanted to influence, the Fire 17 trainings or whatever. But at some point, I think early-ish in the first few years of being a lieutenant, something that made sense to me was that each day we would have a thing that we would do. Now, we would always train. We would always break bread together. We would always do, a handful of stuff, check off the trucks, all the things that always happened. But there would also be something that we were doing. So, whether it's something tedious like pre-plans or testing hydrants, then today we're doing that. Today we're going to build a training. Today we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to get on every commercial roof in our zone. We're going to try to do it by the end of today, and we would just go out and hit all of the roofs, whatever it was. And sometimes it would be relatively silly, however fun. And what I found is if you bake it into something like training, but you don't say we're going to do ladder training all day. What you say is we're going to get on every roof. Which roof do you want to start with? And then the crews are like, oh, let's go check this one out. And long story short, though, is by having a goal for that day, not necessarily saying time by time between 8 and 9, we're going to do this, between 9 and 10, we're going to do this, but by saying, hey, by the end of the day, let's accomplish all of this. The crew has buy-in. And then also, I believe it helps professionally develop the crew, because now we are all a part of this time management thing.
Absolutely, man. And it's infectious, right? And it starts from the top. So it was one of those things that being new, I was super motivated to the point of like, I wanted it all, and I wanted it like right away. Right.
Sure.
And I had no idea, like we were just talking about before we hit record, the caliber of human beings. Like, I'm going to go further than just firemen, because
Mm-hmm.
firemen is what we do. It's not who we are, right? It's
Sure.
something that I think we've been given the opportunity to serve, but we're the type of people that when that opportunity is no longer there, we serve in a different capacity. And knowing what I know now, the people like yourself, Sean Beam, Chris Cole, like at that station, Anthony Gillen, so many people, Todd Leeds, that carried themselves in the way of just consistently being better, like every single shift, every single day,
Mm-hmm.
was super contagious. And I think in the fire service that we have today, you're starting to see less and less of that. And I think the primary reason is because of the leadership, right? It always starts at the top. So, would the people that worked with you, worked around you, be as progressive if you weren't? I don't think so, right? But if you see somebody striving and doing more and being better and always accomplishing things, that kind of pushes you. And
Mhm.
for you to come to know you and learn from you, you were somebody that kind of pushed that onto people of like not really making them feel uncomfortable, but hey man, like what's your next step? Like what are we doing here?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's from a leadership standpoint. The two things we had is I sometimes had some of my firefighters who had goals that were, very big goals that were outside of the fire service. I want to get a degree, and like one of them, I want to get a degree, want to become a teacher, and I want to leave the fire service, which is fantastic. We all have our life dreams. And what I told him was like, I want for you to accomplish all of that. I want you to become a teacher. I want you to chase your life goals. While you're working here, though, you're also a firefighter. So while you're a firefighter, these are the things I need from you. And if you deliver my expectations to me, I will move heaven and earth to help you achieve your goals. And in doing so, we found this balance. So it's not that I had a firefighter who is no longer wants to be a firefighter and wants to leave. He adored his time as a firefighter. I still talk to him, and Adam Noble, so he's still around. He's doing great, and I think anyway, he's doing very, very well. But it would be easy for some company officers to write them off as, you don't want to be a firefighter anymore. Well, you're dead to me. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Whereas for me, I just use that as a tool to say, great, let's get you to accomplish your goals, and while you're here, let's accomplish our goals, and we'll do it. And I think if you can find that common ground from a leadership standpoint, it's easy to get people to develop both personally and professionally, because you realize that these goals they overlap. Like the better you do professionally, the better you'll do personally, and vice versa.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the beginning. Where did this leadership style come from? Did you experience in your tenure at your department this was the example, or was it the opposite? Right? I've never asked you to talk to you about that.
Sure. So before we hit record, all of the names that you mentioned, those are all my peers. So we all kind of grew up together. It wasn't that while I believe we influence a lot of people in a positive way, we were influencing each other. But I think to answer your question, there were a handful of leaders that I worked for that, might have been good leaders and could get people to do stuff, but they weren't. They were maybe a little toxic or had something about them that just didn't resonate with me. And as you're finding your way as a leader, at least for me, as I was finding my way, and as an instructor, I would try to emulate the people that I saw were effective, and I would learn that, well, that doesn't work for me. It works for them, but it doesn't work for me.
Right.
And as I did that, I would slowly adjust traits that I could. But then at some point, I met a handful of people that were extremely influential to me. So Shane Alexander is one of them. Bill Wentland's another one. So we can get much bigger than all of this, but a lot of them were at the fire college. And what happened is, you have your on duty experiences, but then when I was working at the fire college, teaching or developing programs and stuff, I was able to take the experiences I had from the job, apply them to the fire college and to training environments, with the support of people above me in a way that was different. And then all of a sudden, I realized that you don't have to yell at people to be a good leader. You don't have to yell at people to make them do what you want to do. In fact, you can talk very nicely to somebody and make them realize that they didn't hit your expectations, and make them want to do better. Mm-hmm. And as I experienced some of leaders with those traits, and as I learned the traits that I didn't want to have, I developed whatever works for me. And I don't think there's no trademark, there's nothing unique. I don't have any special secret or anything, but what it was I found the things that worked for me and I was able to apply them. And then the last piece, and this requires a little bit of humility, is, people like you that obviously you've worked for me. I respect you very much, regardless of rank. I want your feedback. And so I could also tell when I missed the mark. And there were times that I got onto somebody and I, walked away from it and realized that the outcome of that conversation wasn't what I wanted. The goal is to improve performance, get everybody better, accomplish goals. And whenever that would happen to me, it resonated big. Like the goal was for everything to be positive, even if we're having a negative conversation. And that's not to say there's not times that people need to be disciplined and fired and things like that. That's separate. But ultimately, even when I think I found my groove, I was constantly self-assessing to see what I could do better, or if I stumbled, why did that just happen? What can I do to not let that happen?
Right. And I think that's something that's like everlasting. It's you have to consistently always go inward and ask yourself, like, how did that go? How did I do? How could I have done better? Because if we sit on the assumption that like I handled that great every time, then
you're blind.
Exactly. And we're not open for development. We're closed-minded and we're just like stopping at that point. I just want to share this with you. I don't know if you remember this. So I didn't know how to cook a Pop-Tart. Like when I got hired, I didn't know anything. And I remember we cooked dinner one night, and it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. I remember, and we were talking about this when we were talking about smoke divers, how, and anybody out there going through a career, like take a lot of pictures, write things down, because you forget the little details that are amazing. But I'll share two things with you. The first thing was we were cooking dinner, and
Mm-hmm.
you were like, "Hey kid, help me cut these peppers." And I looked at you like you had a dildo on your head. I was like, I have no idea what we're doing. And he's like, "All right." And you were like, "All right, kid, just pay attention and learn." And you told me, you were like, "The moment you learn how to cook a dish is the moment you'll find a woman you want to marry, right? Because she'll adore you for knowing how
Mm-hmm.
to cook." And then I learned. I sure as shit learned. And ironically, about 6 months ago, I had a new guy that came, and he's like, "Hey, how can I help with dinner?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. This kid knows a little bit about." And he started like just fucking up these peppers, like cutting them in a way I've never seen before. And I'm like, "Hey, man, you've never cut peppers before." He's like, "No, no." I'm like, "All right, well, let me show you. Like, let me teach you." And like
Oh,
just
that's
in
awesome.
that moment, I thought about you, and it was crazy.
So it's so funny, right? That the cooking a meal, and I've used a similar line with a handful of my firefighters. So Chris Grace is the other one that comes to mind, but I do remember that with you. I remember that with a handful of people. And to me, so cooking and eating as a team that's team building,
Mm.
right? We're doing stuff together. It's not we're not sweating, we're not doing whatever, but we're making this thing together, and that's important. So to me, there's value just in that, just being there and being a part of it. But number two, talking down to someone because they don't know how to cook is
Mm.
absurd, right? I didn't know how to cook until someone taught me how to cook. So hey, come here, be a part of the team. Let's do this together. And one of the hooks that I had for young men who were, why do I need to know how to cook or something like that was essentially that line, which was this, go on a date, bring her home, cook a dinner for her. That's fantastic. And all of a sudden, someone who was previously resistant to the idea of I'm going to learn how to cook was like, oh wait, this could benefit.
Yeah, 100%. This is actually what my
That's
time.
so funny. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that. And then, it was one of those things that at such a young age, I just knowing what I know now, I wish I would have asked more questions.
Mm-hmm.
I think for anybody listening, and you give your input as well, the person that, you're told all the time, speak less, listen more. And that's a great, way. This is a great thought process.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't necessarily agree with that because not every leader or person that's knowledgeable or experienced is spewing information. So if you don't ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
you don't understand that you're literally surrounded by walking encyclopedias in different areas of genius, right?
Right.
For you, you had USAR, you had fire, like you had life experience, and so did Chris Cole, so did Sean Beam. And for me being new, I didn't know, like I should have asked so many more questions on the why of everything, right?
Sure.
Obviously you got your simple, generic fundamentals of, the water in the truck, the ladder complement on the ladder truck, like our zone, our first do, our second do. You've got the simple stuff. With experience comes a very vast knowledge of understanding the why behind everything because you've done shit the wrong way to understand, the things that don't work and the things that do work.
Right. And I think to your point, you'll hear people say, don't ask questions, just do what I say. And that in itself is wrong. Now, there are times when we're on a fire, on an emergency, where following orders as given is very important because time is of the essence. But
Absolutely.
when we're done with that, ask the question and ask, this doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, keep asking, well, why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? And in my experience, less secure leaders tend to shut someone down when they're asking those questions. And it could be because they don't know the answer why. I think, though, to your point, we are surrounded by people, and not just in the fire service. Honestly, go to the grocery store, and when you're checking out, look around you. And all of the people that are in the aisle have an incredible task that we will never know because we don't ask them questions. And when I'm on a plane or when I'm anywhere, if somebody will talk to me, I just ask them questions. And I think that's your point, too, is that everyone has so much more to offer. But I look back at some of the times that I was with mentors of mine or influential people of mine. Maybe not, they didn't spend that much time with me, but people that I know knew a lot. And I missed the opportunity to ask them questions. And yeah, and the best I can say is, take advantage of it now. Ask the questions, record the podcasts, and do what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll kind of fast forward through your kind of journey in the fire service, and I personally want to know, what was the most fun you had? What position was it? You held a lot of different positions, and like what do you wish you would have enjoyed more versus
Mm-hmm.
because I know the type of person you are, and I know you were always you're super driven and you're super focused on progress.
Mhm.
Do you feel that there was times that you overlooked what was right in front of you, and then now come to look back, you're like, man, like that was it, like that was the best?
So that's a great question. I don't think I ever overlooked it. I recognized what it was when it was, but you don't know something's the best until you're past it, right? Because the next thing might be the new best. What I can tell you is that being a company officer was the absolute most fun position. You're still fighting fire, but from a leadership standpoint, you're directly influencing everyone from the brand new person who just got hired to even a very senior person that everyone looks at as being, an old grouch that doesn't do much of anything. You can still influence them and bring them over, to the good side or whatever you want to say. And that position was fantastic because you're still sweating with everybody. You're still training with everybody. You're still doing all of the stuff. I loved it because also I loved watching people promote out from under me. I've heard of company officers who literally discouraged people from promoting because he would lose, a good driver or a good firefighter because if you took this next one, which is just absurd, that blows my mind, absurd. So it was fantastic when I had folks that came and then ultimately promoted and left. I mean, that is the best day ever. Even though you're going to miss them, and you loved working with them, then it's terrible to think this is all we're ever going to be, and we're going to be on this company forever. Even though I love the crews that I had, and I missed those times. The best thing is for all of us to eventually, do whatever's right for us. Now, if being a firefighter for 30 years, tailboard firefighter for 30 years is what someone wants to do, then God bless. And from a leadership standpoint, I would encourage them to qualify for the next position and maybe even the next one and to help train others and do all of these things. But if you don't want the promotion, don't take the promotions. Stay where you want to be. But anyway, the company officer spot was fantastic. Once I made district, the difference there was even though I had, 5 lieutenants reporting to me, I was the lieutenant essentially by the time you're in that spot, or any company officer. Who you are has been established. And that's not to say you can't still influence and train somebody, but that rock has been formed. And now you might have to chisel away at some things because by the time they're there, in theory, have made it through some of the crucible. So there's less direct leadership. It's more of an indirect thing because you're not physically there with them all the time.
Right.
You can still influence, but it's just different. And then the other difference is that you're actually enabling them to do the things that you were doing when you were a company officer. So it would be interfering with them if you tried to reach below them and really, really mentor their people. Now, again, that doesn't mean you can't have influence on them,
Right.
but it all of a sudden felt removed. And it felt removed in a good way because I know what I wanted from my district officers. I wanted them to enable me to do the things I wanted to do and take the handcuffs off and let me be awesome at my job. So that I was able to do that. I was able to do that. I also encouraged them to train. Like, let's set up, we would do district training. So we did Firehouse 17 trainings when I was there, but then in the district, once a month, each station would host a training. And to me, that was a big win because you could take a lieutenant who might not have been the best instructor and feel really intimidated about getting in front and teaching people, especially newer lieutenants, but honestly, even experienced lieutenants, and make them and their crew realize that they have something to offer. Let's just figure out a way to present it. And I would help them every step of the way, which is really cool to see them develop. But anyhow, the spot that I look back on with the most fondness is that company officer position because we had so much fun, got to fight fire, got to do all the fun stuff.
Yeah. And you led the way, and that's something that is missing right now. And I want to touch back on something that is very prevalent. And this is the leader that is in the position of thinking they need to know everything and not okay with understanding that, like, you're not going to know everything. And that's okay. How are you able to handle and maneuver that? I mean, for anybody listening, this guy is a walking thesaurus in many areas. So you were very, very well versed in your professional expectations of your job. And there wasn't much stuff that you didn't know. But how are you able to kind of walk that line as a leader in not having, I guess the best word would be that ego of like, I'm the boss. I mean, you and Tim both were excellent at stepping back and understanding that I'm not the best at everything. But you kind of were the best at a lot of things. Now hindsight's 2020.
Right. So first off, thank you. There's a lot of compliments wrapped up in that. And there's a handful of things I'd like to delayer. Is one, remember, you're talking about yourself 10, 15, 5 to 10 years ago or so, somewhere in there. And the person you were then, of course, doesn't know what you know now. And so it's very easy for that person to look up to a company officer and see these great things that seem so intimidating. And this person knows it all. And, I love my career and I put a ton of energy into trying to learn everything I can. So So I'm glad that's the way you looked at me, but also realize you were looking at me through younger eyes. So there's a filter there. But let me say this too, is that when I ever ran a call or did a thing or went to an exercise or attended a class or whatever, and I all of a sudden realized this, I had unconscious ignorance where I didn't know that I didn't know, right? It's not my fault that I don't know this because I didn't even know it was out there.
Right.
When I would find that moment, I would then do everything I could to gain the experience I needed to at least know about it. And I might not be the solution, but I can now, from a recognition prime decision making, I could recognize that this is a situation, and therefore I'm going to call these people. So I did everything I could to anticipate problems, and then what would I do if this happened, or what if fill in the blank? What if? How would I handle that? And I did my best to game that all the way through. And by doing that, then I could be very comfortable running calls and doing it. But one thing to add on that is, so I'm here in Tallahassee. I'm right down the road from the state EOC. I enjoy deployments. I enjoy all the command stuff and the coordination of our USAR assets and all the fun stuff. The first time I set foot in the EOC, I was John Durio took me in there. So I worked for him when he worked for the state, and it was at an exercise. And the entire state EOC was alive with people moving and phone calls and taking notes and moving around. All this energy. I was so uncomfortable. Like I walked in and I'm like, I have no idea what's happening. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know anything about any of this. And that I felt, like I said, so uncomfortable. And afterwards I talked to John and I was like, man, this was not comfortable. What do you expect from me when we get here? And he, in a positive way, but he was like, you'll figure it out. You've got the capability. You'll make this happen.
Right.
Which that did not satisfy me at all. I was like, no, I'm not going to show up to the big game with the, you'll figure it out, kid. That's not going to happen. So I'm telling you, I immediately started training and learning everything I could about it, to the point where now when I go there, it feels like home. It's fantastic. But I was so uncomfortable. What I told him was, give me any call. Whatever it is, I know if I don't know how to do it, I know who to call. And I was so lost. What's also funny is I look back at that and I realized that what I saw were a bunch of people working, but many of them didn't know what they were doing either. Everybody was learning. It's just, it was so new to me that it was incredibly intimidating. And the trick though, again, to kind of bring this back, is that don't be scared of those intimidating moments. That's your shortfall. That's where you need to just train, read, do something.
Yeah, you make such a valid point. I had a conversation the other day with my company officer. Shout out to my current captain. He knows who he is. I'll keep his name out of it. But we were just talking about actually EMS, and we were talking about running really bad pediatric calls, and how the hospitals, like the children's hospitals down here in South Florida, how they operate. And I was like, well, we don't get enough training on that stuff, man. And we're not well versed in that type of environment. We don't have the call volume. And he looked at me and he's like, neither do the hospitals, man. Like, a lot of times, most of the time, they just figure it out just like we do, right? And I think you just made such a valid point. It's having, the young Julian, the 18, 19-year-old Julian looking at a seasoned, officer and Scott Chappell. I assumed that, like, you knew so much, Chris Cole knew so much. And I don't even think it was that obviously you guys were well-versed. You knew a lot.
Sure.
But I think it was more of the confidence in knowing that you'll figure it out. Right. You may not have all the answers, but in life, I mean, not even the fire department, you don't need all the answers. And I think a lot of people are so paralyzed by overanalysis in just making decisions, like decide,
Yeah. And to that point too, there's not a checklist for everything, which on the one hand feels scary to some, because I want to know what I need to do next here, and here. But on the other side is, once you realize you don't need a checklist, you just need to make good decisions. It's liberating, because now I don't need to know how to handle every situation. I need to know how to handle situations in a dynamic environment and make good decisions, and then reassess my decision making in the current operational picture and adjust as needed. And it's funny you say this too, because I literally just wrote down a quote from we were teaching some active shooter stuff out in Washington, and one of the leads said, we're not here to teach you what to think. We're here to teach you how to think, right? And that's two very different things. The what to think is the checklist, and the how to think is, give me any environment and I can make this happen.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, we're going to fast forward, and I want to know, because I never got to talk to you about this. I think I had already left Marion County, and yeah, I was with Palm Beach when I got the official, I passed Florida smoke divers. But I want to know about your experience. So you were farther along in your career when this opportunity popped up. You had worked for the fire college for years. So talk to me about this process of I would consider you a veteran in the fire department, showing up to what would be considered a young man's class.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I graduated fire school, I knew I wanted to go smoke diver, and honestly, looking back, I didn't know much. All I knew was that there was this patch, and a bunch of people I respected had been through it, and if they can do it, I can do it. Let me just train, and I'll make it happen. And unfortunately, the program had just lost one of its students relatively recently, and while the program was still on the schedule, it was not running. And then at some point, it disappeared for I think on the order of 20 years. So I had just come out of fire school, was ready to do it. And then fast forward 20 years is when it was reborn. And so I had the opportunity to be in the first open enrollment class of the new program. And I helped with everything I could help with, because of course while we didn't have a smoke diver at the time at the fire college or prior to my class, we did have like a RIT program, we had a firefighter survival program, we had a truck company program, we had stuff, and I was lead on some of that, and I was an instructor on others. We also had some of the let's call them old smoke divers, the people that went through the original program, and what we did is, of course, through Belger and the team, but Belger wound up taking lead on it, is recreating, deciding what needed to be updated, but also we took all of the things that are we'll say very, very, very challenging and connected them to objectives. This wasn't just we're trying to burn you up or we're trying to PT you to death or we're trying to do anything like that. What it was each exercise and each thing of the class was connected to some objective or some terminal objective or something that we wanted the student to do. And so it's very deliberate and thought out. It took years to do it. But when I finally had the chance to get in this open enrollment class, I was either 38 or 39. And I thought I was going to be the oldest. And then a D.W. Cooper was in my program, and he is the only human being with both patches. He went through the original, and then he went through with me and passed both times. And so not only does he have the bragging rights of having both patches and successfully went through the program twice, but he was, I think, 2 years older than me, or he still is 2 years older than me. And I was like, son of a bitch, I thought I was going to be the oldest guy here. There's a little bit of something to that. And here I am, there's a guy that's even older than me that completed it. And, he's a badass. But I'll tell you this too, is it was rough. It was rough. And I spent 1 year really, really preparing. I think I held a good baseline physical fitness throughout my entire career. And I still strive for that. But then we'll call it like mission specific training. So smoke diver or, triathlons or marathons or whatever, you do your regular PT, but then you also focus it on that. Man, I did everything I could to just beat myself up and then recover from it. And then when I finally went through the program, what I tell, it's indescribable. And in the sense of, I could articulate it, but anyone who hasn't gone through it's not going to be able to appreciate, how defeated you feel sometimes.
100%.
So I remember this one, I think it was on Wednesday, and we were doing we would do 50 burpees and run a lap. And then we would do 40 burpees and run 2 laps and some version of that. And so the number of burpees dropped each lap and the number of laps increased with each burpee drop. And I mean, I was destroyed, just destroyed. And in my head, everyone else was just killing it and crushing it. And I was literally just falling to the ground and trying to get up and jumping and same thing. And at some point, of course, looking back at it through an instructor's eyes, the intent is not to go through this big PT, and to see how many burpees somebody can do. The intent is to destroy everybody to the point of breaking. And now can you perform as a firefighter? Sure. Well, we're all doing it. We're all going through this. And anyway, in my soul, I knew that I was the weak link. And all of a sudden, one of the instructors said, time to stop. And I'm like, shit, he sees that I'm about to die here and they're killing it because of me. And I was just so overwhelmingly defeating. And I needed to get myself out of that headspace. I need to be ready to do the things we need to do. Now, fast forward a couple of years. I talked to some of the other graduates that were a part of that. Jodwin was one of them. Actually, Jodwin is the one that I specifically remember. And he said this literally the exact same thing I said. He was like, Scott, you were killing it. He's like, I was here, thought I was going to throw up. And then all of a sudden they said, stop. And he's like, I thought they were singling me out. And which was hilarious. And we both had the same feelings of self-defeat. I'm certain that everybody in the class did. But then once I became an instructor, I realized it had nothing to do with any one individual performance. They were PTing everybody to the point of exhaustion. So now what's next? Can you perform? Can you put on your pack and do your air pack drills? Can you do whatever the next thing is? But it was rough. I came out of it and came home and of course had graduated, drove home slowly. I stayed at the fire college every night. I went over to Calhoun's house, had a beer, and basically I was like, I need to go. So Craig Standards actually followed me home because he's like, you are whooped. And I made it home, got a shower and I came out and I was covered, my wife looked at me and truly like covered in bruises and stuff. And she's like, what did they do to you? And I was like, it was a rough week.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. So many people, and it's just David Goggins made a video the other day of motivation. Like, and people
Mhm.
are looking for this motivation. And the interesting thing about motivation is action is motivation, right?
Mhm.
And same thing with this program. Like, words will never do this justice. We can talk here about every little thing to the minute details, and even that feeling. Like, I can resonate with that feeling because there were so many instances in the program where I felt like that, right? And then
Mhm.
you had to get your mind right after that, because it's not like, oh, like that's it, like you go home now, like have a good day. Like, no,
Right.
like, that was just the beginning. Or it was the end of a day and you still had 4 days left, right? So you had to get your mind right, throughout the night. But the experience for me, and I don't know about you, was like, let's talk about hard. Like, there's so many hard things, right? Like, there's,
Mhm.
following a nutritional plan is hard. Waking up early every day is hard. Being disciplined is hard. And that type of hard, it's not even a
Yeah.
program for me. It's an experience. That
Mhm.
experience was life changing, right? And for
I
anybody,
agree.
listening to this, for something to be life changing, you got to die a little bit, right? Like,
Sure.
part of you
Yes.
has to die a little bit, in the aspect of you're going to make decisions that are going to make you a different person from this experience.
Right.
Because,
That is significant emotional event. Right.
yeah, because if you don't, you're going to quit. Like,
Sure. So yeah, you hit on a couple of great things. Is one, you have to have focus and drive to say that this goal is worth everything that I'm putting myself through, and that applies to people going to medical school, applies to you fill in the blank. There's tons of things,
100%.
but specifically smoke diver, where you're beating yourself up and you're doing stuff. When people ask me what I learned in smoke diver, here's one of the things if you think about skills and tasks, I knew how to put on an air pack, I knew how to couple a hose, I knew how to throw a ladder, I knew how to climb stairs, I knew how to do all these things. There's no task that all of a sudden I'm like, this is the task that makes you a smoke diver, right? That doesn't exist. What I learned about was me. What I learned was how much I can take, and not just me, the human body, because we're all the same cells, like you, me, and think of some of the people that are, we won't say high performers, but we're literally all the same cells, same blood, same bones, same everything. And if you can do it and if I can do it, then they can do it too. They just have to choose to. And by smoke diver, what it taught me was that we can all take and do so much more than we think we can. We just have to make the decision that we're not going to stop and keep pushing forward, whatever that looks like. But your body, your mind can take so much and still succeed. And I applied some of the stuff that I've learned, with previous stuff, and just accomplishing large goals, is that you take your big goals and you break them up into smaller goals and objectives and whatnot, and then break those down into activities and break those activities down into tasks. And ultimately, as you click away at some of your tasks, you complete this activity and get enough activities done, you complete an objective. And after you get all your objectives done, you're now, on the edge of completing whatever that goal was. So with Smoke Diver, it was truly, I imagine it was the same for you. All I need to do is make it to lunch. If I can make it to lunch, we're good. And then you break for lunch and lick your wounds and eat something and drink as much as you can and get ready for the next one. And then it's like, okay, I just have to make it till dinner. I
Yeah.
can make it, small chunks, and realize that even though something seems insurmountable, when you break it down and focus on what you need to focus on and don't quit, you can do it.
And, looking back, I really miss those moments of absolute doubt, question, and weakness, right? I miss, because to get to this program, you have to be very highly conditioned, especially now with selection, that they're
Sure.
picking the best of the best. But I think even before selection, right? If you got in the class and you got through the obstacle course and you got through the welcome party,
Hmm.
like, you were physically and mentally dialed to an
Sure.
extent, right?
Absolutely.
So to push a person, an athlete, a fireman, to that point over and over and over again is extremely hard, right? The
Hmm.
conditions, the environment, the individuals that put on the program is one of a unique opportunity and experience. I don't know about you, but for me, I ran a couple hundreds. I've dabbled in those rooms that I was in with
Hmm.
smoke divers mentally,
Hmm.
but I haven't gotten as deep as I was in that class.
Sure.
you know?
The That week was the hardest week of my life as far as physically doing stuff.
Same.
But the success that I had, I was able to graduate and I did all this stuff, and that was what an incredible experience. But the closest that I've gotten to that was when I did an Ironman and I was beat up. And everyone has a reason why, I didn't finish all my training, I didn't do all this stuff. Long story short is I went to Europe to do some training with the Army, then came back with the National Fire Academy, and then came back, got deployed, I think, to Hurricane Irma, And then the day I came off of that deployment, I think 4 days later, I did a half Ironman. And then 6 weeks later, did the full. And during all of that time, I planned on running, I planned on swimming, I planned on doing all that. And long story short was, I definitely did not, and towards the end, didn't do all the things I needed to do. However, my wife's like, do you want to postpone it? You want to do something? I'm like, no, we're doing this.
Yeah.
So I lined up and did it. I'm telling you, so the physical abuse or the physical stuff I had to go through in Smoke Diver in an acute 1 week fashion, not acute, over the week was rough. And the moments of darkness were real. During the Ironman, the last half of the marathon, so, swim, bike, run. So you swim 2.4 miles, you bike 112, and then you run a marathon. The last 12 miles of the marathon, my body, I've never felt it shut down like this before. And in Smoke Diver, it felt down, it did, but it was heat and abuse, and I just want to lie down and die for a little while, and I'll get it back together. My knees, my ankles, my knees, and my hips, it felt like they were connected by rubber bands, and all the rubber bands had been stretched, and I was a wooden doll. I had no confidence in my ability to run. As I ran, I was like, I'm going to fall. And if I fall, I don't know if I can get back up. And if the medics come, they can medically basically terminate your thing. If you can't walk, they can tell you you're done. And I'm like, I'm not going to let that happen. So I slowed down to basically the fastest walk that I could do. But I was terrified that I'd fall and not be able to get back up. And that last 12 miles was, miserable. The whole thing was rough, but it was miserable because I was like, I'm just going to fall and not be able to get up. But anyway, so that is the closest. But that was one day. And that was a handful of hours at the end of that one day. Right. Whereas Smoke Diver, that might happen 3 times before noon. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, it was incredible, and I tell everybody, go, right? Even if you don't
absolutely
successful, that program is not there. It's not intended for people to be successful. It's intended for people to learn. Right. Having the progressive, student mindset, that's something that's lacking in a lot of people. Everybody wants the recognition. Everybody wants a title, but that's not what it's about. I don't know about you, but for me, and you obviously have had a longer career, a longer life than I have. I've come to learn that the finish lines that I've crossed, I've actually been quite empty. Right. Like I just said, those moments, those rooms that I was in mentally, because I call them rooms because I went into the room and I myself had to make my way out. And it was the hardest thing because it wasn't a simple just walk back out of the room. I had to find my way out. I had to make conscious decisions of I'm not going to just quit and die in this room. Mm-hmm. It's crazy to understand that that's the point. That's the purpose. Mm-hmm. Where
So those rooms, are those ultra marathons and things like that? So I've run a handful of marathons and a bunch of triathlons and the Ironman and the half and all that other stuff. I'll tell you one of the biggest differences is that is a solo sport. Even though you have people that have supported you, you're not finishing as a team. And that was one big difference was, let's just say it is apples to apples and then, doing a 100-mile race and doing Smoke Diver is the same. Let's just for the sake of saying it, let's say it's the same. But the big difference is it is not the same. No, I agree. But for the sake of it, you cross the finish line though, and you're basically by yourself. You might know some people and they finish in front of you or behind you or whatnot. And it can be very rewarding, but literally being there and then all of a sudden graduating Smoke Diver and being one of the people that are the cadre that have been with you the entire time, to me, that's an incredible experience. And I'm with you. I understand that it's a little different. Everything else is turned down just a little bit once you graduate that program.
Yeah, it's funny because I got a bunch of guys down here that are complete, absolute, excellent human beings. Mm-hmm. And we go take classes and we go experience things, and the bar is so high. Mm-hmm. It's just it was good, but it wasn't Smoke Divers,
Sure.
And it's tough because once you've been pushed, and again, that's why I tell people all the time, it's not about becoming a smoke diver. It's about the journey and the experience that's going to require, because that in itself is what's going to change you as a person, as a firefighter, as a leader, as a decision maker, along with all the other things that you do that are going to be hard and challenging throughout your life. But you can't measure anything to that. I tell everybody, I'm like, that is its own unique experience that is one of one, no comparison to anything. And it's just, you talk to people that have experienced other programs and they tell you it's just a completely different animal. And I'll be honest, I don't think it's just the itinerary or the outline. I actually know for 100% fact, it's the people, right? The people that have poured so much into it, and it carries. The cadre that was there in 2013, 2014, 2015, A lot of the guys have moved on doing better, different other things, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not so much involved. But what they poured into it is still there, right?
Right, right.
And that's what makes it so special.
It is a special program. Yeah, lots of history.
Yeah. Well, last thing I want to ask you, Scott, before I let you go,
Mm-hmm.
what do you wish you would have done differently in your career as a firefighter?
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything that I can look at and say, I wish I had done this differently. There are times when I look and, I know that I was the wrong path might not be the right word, but was wandering a little bit and needed to redirect. I tried to have those mental conversations with myself at least yearly. Everyone does the, January 1, I'm going to set, my New Year's resolution. Not that I'm not a fan of New Year's resolutions. By all means, make yourself whatever promise you want to make yourself. But what was the difference between yesterday? Like, why didn't you make that promise to yourself yesterday or the day before? But I would use that new calendar year as an opportunity to reassess what I had done each year, because of course, brand new year, let's see what happened. And if I felt that I was off course, then I would course correct. I would review, the goals that I had for me, for my team, for everybody. And if I realized that no progress had been made, especially after a couple of years on a long-term goal, then I would force myself to reassess and either A, this is no longer a goal, right? This isn't what I want to do, or B, I'm on the wrong path and I need to course correct. There's nothing wrong going through your career with changing your goals. I thought, when I was a kid, I wanted to be, an astronaut or a unicorn or a dinosaur or something. And at some point realized that's not going to happen. And that's a valid goal. But as I matured, I realized actually at some point I think I was 17 is when I was like, I want to be a firefighter. And I felt it. And it took me a little while to make that journey. But my point being is that I don't look back at it and think, you know what, back when I was 24, I wish I would have done X, Y, Z, because I tried to keep having that. Now, having said that, I just had this conversation the other day. As involved as I feel like I was throughout my entire career, trying to be involved with all the things that there were. I do remember at times in my career, at 7 years in or 10 years in, or even 12 or 15 years in, something would open my eyes to a part of this career that I had never been exposed to, never thought about. And then I would be irritated at myself. Like, how do you not know this? How this has existed this entire time? How did you miss it? And I can't remember the exact number of years, but I can remember a handful of things that was an eye opener. And as involved as I was in the fire service, to all of a sudden have my eyes opened, that was I look back and I think, what if I opened my eyes earlier? Having said all of this, there's nothing about my career that I wish was different, because it got me here, and I'm talking to you right now. I mean, what an incredible blessing we have to have this career. So I'm thrilled of all of it. But what I can tell you is that I got a couple of books that I'm going to work on, and one of them is about a career in the fire service. And the reason I want to write it is because there are so many opportunities that this career has, and so many incredible things that you can do. But there's oftentimes you have someone who doesn't know that. And if they're working for a company officer who doesn't know that, or in a district or battalion that doesn't, then they'll never find out. So anyhow, that's what I look back on, and there's nothing that I think I would change. Recognize that I probably could have woken up earlier to some stuff, but I say that, and here we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for the people listening, you are a very accomplished person, and you definitely squeezed that t-shirt full of sweat completely out, I think. And I'm so glad that I see you, enjoying, and I don't like the word retirement, enjoying the next chapter. We talked about this before we hit record. Anybody listening, like, you cannot make the fire department, you can't make anything your identity, right? Because nothing lasts forever. Nothing. And our life is a book, and books have chapters, and not every chapter is amazing. Not every chapter is sad. Not every chapter is happy, and not every chapter is exciting. But we can't let our book be consumed of one thing, right? I'm not going to specifically say the fire department or, XYZ. We have to understand that the book needs to be interesting. And the only way for the book to be interesting is to have the approach that I believe you had, and that's to squeeze everything out and to leverage opportunity. And I completely agree with you. I wouldn't be the person I am today without the fire service, but I also know that the fire service has opened so many doors for me that it has shown me that there's more to life than the fire service. And that doesn't mean that I don't love it. That doesn't mean that I haven't given my all to it, and I will continue to be passionate and invest more. It shows me that this isn't forever, right? We can't ride fire trucks forever, right? And that's okay.
Right. I was having a conversation with James Gearing, it's probably a couple years ago now, and one of the things we talked about was veterans. And if someone serves in the Army or any of the armed services, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, or full career, you're a veteran, and that is 100% respect for everybody that did that. And the fire service is a little different, because when you ask somebody, were you in the Army? And they're like, yeah. How long were you in? 6 years. Great. What are you doing now? And you do it, and you're an Army veteran. But when you ask somebody, how long were you in the fire service? And they say 6 years, the question is, well, what happened? Right. And that's weird. That's so strange. And I'd never thought about it until we talked about it. And I don't know if there's any other careers, I mean, maybe law enforcement, but I don't know that there's any other careers where people like have that expectation that once you start, you're never going to get out. And that's absurd.
100%.
So join the fire service, enjoy being a firefighter, do the things you want to do, accomplish all the goals you want to have. There's so much that you can get out of this career. But also at the same time, if you want to eventually get your degree and become a teacher, if you want to do something else, this is a chapter. This doesn't define you. So anyway, yeah, to your point, that it's important to recognize that this is a part of your life, not your life.
Absolutely. Scott, thank you, bro, so much.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you, man. I love you. You've impacted me, like I said earlier, more than you know. And I thank you for that, because the life you lived was hard. Making those active decisions to grow and develop is exhausting. It's tiring. It's tough.
It's fun, right? And it's rewarding.
Yeah, of course.
Exactly.
It's hard. And on the other side of hard is a life of being fulfilled and being an example to somebody. So, and you were that example to me. So thank you, man.
Julian, that means a lot to you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy, proud, excited to see that you're doing so well. That is outstanding. So great talking to you. And this has been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.